CFP paint back again, post CFP, like college football playoff quarterfinals, heading into the semis. Yeah, we got a couple things to talk about, both responding to the most recent round, looking forward to the round of 4, and a couple of odds and ends, transfer portal stuff, kind of this, that, and the other, little jumble. I don't think this will be crazy long, but Corey, takeaways from the quarterfinal round.
That Ohio State team's really, really, really good. Like,
what? How did they lose to Michigan? I hear everyone's asking this, and I just think, I think they just,
I think that's what you kind of get with Howard. If Howard plays adequate, you're going to be successful. But if he doesn't, and he can't get the ball into the hands of his good players, then they're screwed. But
it really makes me want to rewatch the game, because I think Michigan sort of just baited them into playing a game of running the football, and they just weren't able to do it. It's like, why don't you just throw the ball? And including that, just to rehash, like they had that drive before the halftime where they scored the touchdown with Jeremiah Swift, where they were throwing the football, and it's like, oh, well, this is what's going to happen. And then the second half, it went away from it. But yes, they look very impressive. Can we agree at this point? I know that I predicted Notre Dame to win the championship, and that was mostly kind of a tongue-in-cheek. Like I did call it, right? Like, but like
Texas, right? Over Notre, I think I picked Texas over Notre Dame.
Yeah, we both have Notre Dame in the final, but I think really that looking back on my prediction of the Ohio State versus Texas final matchup, like what on earth was I thinking? I think we can be pretty safe. Okay, I am going to say, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, the winner of that Texas-Ohio State game probably wins the championship, right? Like,
I'll be honest, like that Notre Dame defense is impressive to me. And so
they lost another defensive lineman, though. I am worried about the longevity of them.
Georgia couldn't run up the middle on them.
Yeah. So, they'll be good. I wonder how they'll hold up in the back end if they have to face either Texas or Ohio State. Both have pretty good passing offenses. I think they're good on the back end, but I just don't know if they'll.
And this is where
it'll be interesting.
It definitely matters. But I definitely feel like the top of the bracket was just significantly harder than the bottom of the bracket.
And we talked about that. I don't feel as strong about like, we need to reseed or we need to eliminate the automatic buys. Like I'm fine with doing those. I don't really feel strongly one way or the other on that. But I think it's gonna be fascinating. So I guess we jumped right to the Oregon Ohio State game.
Ask me what my takeaways were, and that was my.
Yeah, well, and that is the big one, right? Like, because no one expected that. It's funny. I was like scrolling through Twitter, and everyone was like, especially at the very beginning of the Texas-Arizona State game, which we'll get to that in just a minute. But like when it was 14-0 there, and it looked like, okay, Texas is not going to have a whole lot of problem. They scored in 3 plays and then didn't even touch the ball on offense. They got a special teams touchdown to go up 14-0, and it just seemed like, okay, well that game has the potential to snowball. And people were already like, man, this round's just like the last one. There's no competitive games, and it's like, don't get me wrong, as a fan, like I want competitive games, but like to me, when that's your complaint, like it's like, okay, maybe I don't know. I just like that's going to happen here and there, and especially when you go to 12 teams competing for a national championship. I don't know if you've got 12 championship caliber teams, but all that to say, like everyone was saying at that point, just wait till this evening. Wait till the Oregon Ohio. That's going to be the banger. And that was the biggest dud.
Well, Jeremiah Smith didn't catch a ball. Caught one ball in the second half, I think. It was like right? He had like 6 receptions for like 100 and something yards, and then it was like
and 2 touchdowns in the first half.
And the end of the game was 7 receptions because they didn't need to throw him the ball anymore.
Yeah, I might have pulled him. I might have just been like, you just sit down. They did have a chance at one point to like they scored right before half to make it 31-7. I think
2 points.
And 31-8, that's right, they went for it. And then they score, they get the ball out of half, and they go down and score, and it's 31-15. And then they force a 3 and out. And I was like, okay,
we might
hold on, maybe. And then when they didn't score on that possession, I think Ohio State scored on the following possession to kind of just reassert a bigger gap between them is like, okay, this is done. So I was kind of hopeful at the end there that, well, I guess not at the end, but at the start of the second half that there was an opportunity for them to really make it interesting. It didn't ever really happen that
Mhm.
way. Yeah, it's snowballed on them, and I think my takeaway there is like you cannot legislate your way out of blowout games, right? Some of them are just going to
Yep.
happen. So
It's in the
I
NFL
love that
also.
people are bringing up, hey, yeah, exactly. That it happens in the NFL. It happens in the Super Bowl at times. Like great teams get beat by lots here and there, right? It just happens sometimes. Sometimes it's just not your day. You turn the ball over a couple times, you're out of position, and the team makes you pay. And that's where I don't want anyone who the power brokers of the sport to overreact to, oh, we had a bunch of blowouts. Well, that sometimes happens, right? Like that just is the case. And so, if anything, as a fan of the overall sport, I think it was a good thing that one of your blue bloods got ran out of the building.
Mhm.
Or blue bloods, maybe we can't. I wouldn't call Oregon a blue blood because they haven't won a championship, but they are over the last 15 or so years a constant national contender. Let's put it that way.
Mhm.
And I am thrilled that and the number one seed got ran out of the building. So it kind of puts all of those narratives of like, hey, these teams didn't belong because no one's going to sit here and say Oregon wasn't worthy. They totally were.
Yeah,
I mean, they beat Ohio State last time. Like, so like that to me is an open and shut case to say like, hey, blowouts are sometimes going to happen. And to me, how delicious was it to have at half, like right when they got back from half, it's 31-8, and Kirk Herbstreit has to go like, "This is what it is," like, and kind of knowing all the crap that he talked in the lead up to that game, and in reaction to the previous round, especially prior to the Tennessee blowout, like that, he's just like, "Hey, okay, like this one's being rubbed right in your face,"
yeah,
like. And it's just like sometimes that happens, and that's okay. There's no way for you to control
no,
for that. So I just wanted to that was my big takeaway is like, hey, anyone can get
hmm
beat, and that's the whole point of playing the games. Like that's why we do this. So
yeah. I will sit there and say like we're just talking the Oregon Ohio State game. Like we kind of talked about how like Oregon in that first game they relied on Tez Johnson or no sorry Evan Stewart, Tez Johnson, that little combo there, and then Jordan James ran for 115 yards. That opened up the game for them to be successful. Ohio State
yeah,
shut down the run, and then it's like, all right, you can do the pass. We know you're gonna pass. So you're not gonna be nearly as effective. Like I'm going back to last week or the last game. So 32-31, Oregon wins. 23 receptions for 341 yards. That's 14.8 yards a reception. And then you had 31 carries for 155 yards. You come back to this one, you have 29 passes for 299 yards, 10.3 yards a pass. So you drop 4 yards a pass. But it's because Ohio State knew you had to pass because you ran the ball 28 times for negative 23 yards in the game. Like,
yikes. How many sacks were
I'm
in
not
that?
sure
If
off
you
the
can
top
see
of my
it.
head. I'm Dylan Gabriel. If you take
Okay,
out
just
Dylan
curious.
Gabriel's sacks alone, you still ran the ball only for, let me do my math real quick, 7, 21, 20 yards.
Yeah,
Like, it's insane. Like, and that would have been 20 yards for 15 carries. You were averaging 1.2 yards a carry, if my math's right. I don't know if that's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And probably important to note that Evan Stewart didn't
He
play in this
didn't.
game
Yeah, he got
for
juiced.
Oregon. So I mean that's a contributing factor. I don't think it. That's not the smoking gun as to why they got blasted, but no, I'm right there with you. Ohio State's defensive line controlled that entire game. Very impressive. They've been able to do it now 2 weeks in a row, or 2 games in a row, I should say. And if you get that kind of effort from them in both the semis and in the final, like you said, them playing at their best, I think, is the national
They're the
champions
best team
at this
as
point.
far
Like,
as capability wise ceiling, in my opinion.
yeah, I agree.
But
I
we've
agree.
seen them play
Um,
as good as the last 2 games as they have the entire season.
yeah, the entire year,
And they could lay an
exactly.
egg
And so
just like we've seen them do. They struggled against Nebraska. They lost to Michigan. I mean, like they could lay an egg, and it could be a blowout. I mean, this Texas team isn't a joke either. So
yeah, I'm excited to see that one play out. Let's talk Texas Arizona State. Unless you had more on the Oregon Ohio State game.
No, just I mean, there's no way Ryan Day gets fired after those 2 games, right? Like I don't think there's any way he got fired at
No,
all.
no.
Even though people are talking about it, but like you've made yourself look legit and you've gotten into the semifinals already. So
Yeah, I think we can put that talk to bed, especially when it's like, hey, look, we have this cheat code out at wide receiver for another
dude,
2 years.
watching him,
Like, and if I leave and the whole staff gets gutted, he might leave. So now he's got a good little bargaining chip
yeah,
for 2 years.
that's another thing. Watching Jeremiah Smith play against college kids, I was like, dude, I feel like the
It's
17-year-olds he
unreal.
played against last year.
Oh
Like
my gosh.
he
Like
looks he looks like Jones
like a
or
5
something
year
like that.
pro.
Like just
Yeah.
hulk of a man against boys, even in college students. I
Yeah.
mean, it's insane. Ugh. All right, let's go to the Arizona Texas game.
Yeah, no. He's yeah. So, well, kind of like I said earlier, it at the beginning, it was like, oh, this could be a problem for Arizona State. Arizona State punches back, and really, if you look at it from just a yardage and I have not looked at Stats of War's net success rate. I'm curious to see if he did he put that out. I'll have to go find it. I'll try and find it when you're talking at some point, but. Um, I think for the most part of the game, I think they did a better job moving the football, and really it boiled down to okay, you gave up a couple of explosive plays, like again a special teams touchdown, that drive that was 3 plays long, Texas's opening drive. After that, your defense settled in and played very nicely. Um, Cam Scadaboo, what a warrior! He's so fun to watch.
284 yards,
Um,
all-purpose yards.
awesome.
99.
And you needed him to be a hero, and he
Oh yeah,
absolutely
he's great.
was. Um, I think you and I have talked about this separately, but just for our listening audience, do we want to talk about the targeting call / no call?
Yeah, let's talk about the game first, and then we can talk about the targeting call. Like you, or at least
Okay,
you've
all
talked
right,
about it. Let me get a say on this. Like I was worried watching this game. I'm like,
yeah,
Arizona State's offense cannot put the ball in the end zone. I mean, you look at it, it was like field goal,
yeah,
missed field goal, safeties. Like they're scoring every single way that they couldn't, or not scoring. And like they'd go down, they'd turn the ball over on downs. I think I'm going to go through their
yeah. I think they went for it a couple of
yeah
times. Yeah,
field goal, punt, downs, missed field goal, downs, field goal, and then it all of a sudden like clicks. And this is where like it's touchdowns are so important. It's like touchdown, touchdown, and then the punt. But by then they've tied it. Like the 2 touchdowns, it's 14-point swing. And all of a sudden you're like you're right in the game because you happen to have those 8 points that you captured. But like they could not finish. They could not get that last little piece to go in, and finally all of a sudden it clicked. Like the pass from Scadaboo that to wow yeah,
Malik
shout out
McLean.
Malik McLean, former Florida State, former Penn State.
Yeah, we remember your FSU days.
But he makes that catch and then kind of opens up the game, and they're able to get it in the end zone and have an opportunity there. And they kind of get themselves into this point where it's 24-24. And when does the targeting happen? Is it it's in the last play, isn't it? Touchdown.
So it's not the last play. It's the last
That's
Arizona
right.
State possession. There's about a
Yeah.
minute left. They're at midfield ish. They throw a ball underneath on a 4th down and I think about
Yeah.
10, and he catches it for like anywhere between 4 and 6 yards, and then is hit by Michael Taft. And he is hit high. I think like if you read strictly the letter of the law, it probably should be a targeting, like forcible contact to the head neck area
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out where that was.
on a defenseless player, right? Like and by definition, he's defenseless because he's catching the football.
That was on a 3rd and 15, or
It was on a 4th down. So the stop turns the ball over on downs, but if the penalty had been called, it's a 15-yard penalty that extends the drive and gets you close to field goal range, which again, knowing Arizona State's kicking situation is not a guarantee.
Yeah.
But but yeah, you're going to be in plus territory. You're going to be across midfield, fresh set of downs. I don't know if they had any timeouts. Like I can't remember off the top of my head, but you're going to have an opportunity to kick a game-winning field goal or potentially put it in the
Yeah.
end zone.
So watching that play, honestly, my thought process was that was like it. I watched it. I was like, oh, it's not intentional. Like it's clearly not intentional. Like to me, if I could understand if you call it by the letter of the law, but it didn't look like it was like that player was trying to launch that at them. That player was trying to hurt that player. It just kind of looked like, hey, he was going to tackle. He was trying to tackle him, and the receiver is catching the ball and starting to turn, like, and you happen to get caught in the face a little bit. So I was okay with the non-call. I know that people probably like. If I was an Arizona State fan, I would have been frustrated with it. But to me, I was like, I don't think it was targeting to some degree. But if you go by the
yeah,
letter of the law, it is targeting.
yeah, and it's funny. Yeah, we actually land kind of in the exact same spot because what we didn't include is that one of the key plays earlier in I think the fourth quarter, maybe it was the third quarter, second half for sure. Arizona State intercepts a deep pass from Quinn Ewers, and not the intercepting player, but the safety over the
Yeah,
top hits the receiver in a very similar fashion. And I would say actually, if you look at how the safety plays the, like makes the tackle, is way more of an indicator of targeting. Like he does launch, he turns his shoulder, he does hit him with his shoulder, but he launches upward, kind of that upward strike, and he hits him first in the chest, but it goes up to his
yeah.
helmet. You see his head snap back pretty bad. So I didn't like when they started to look at that one. I was like, I mean, I can see why you would think it's targeting, but I was kind of hoping that they wouldn't call it because it just didn't seem like, I don't know, it didn't seem egregious enough to
Well,
warrant the call, especially given that it changes possession, right? Like it would fundamentally change the game in that it would extend
yeah.
to Texas possession. And then the same thing happens right at the end of the game with Arizona State. So those being called the same, I think it comes out in the wash.
I did.
Like I actually
I
felt
felt like the
okay about
safety
it.
in that play though was trying to play the ball, and the ball gets picked off between them, and the receiver's trying to play the ball, and then they kind of it's their reaction that kind of like I think he's going to break up a pass that's going to happen, and that ball's going to be kind of close to where that area is, and so he's attacking a ball, but
You're talking about the
yeah, the
Arizona
Arizona
State
State
safety?
safety is attacking like
Okay.
where the
Yeah.
ball's going to be, and the receivers are going to where the ball is, but when it gets picked off, they finally both kind of react like, oh, it's not here, and that's what ends up with the collision being the way it was, and that's partially why I was like okay with it also not being called targeting, because it was like it to me watching it multiple times it was like clearly it didn't seem like there was intent. It seems like they're both trying to make a play on the ball and someone and try and defend each other, but like the result that happened in front of them they have to deal with, and so now they're reacting to it, and but both players are already midair, so you kind of have to deal with what you're dealing with. So
Yeah. I yeah, I that's kind of where I land on that one is if they had called one and not the other, I'd be frustrated if I was the fan base that didn't get the benefit of the doubt. But seeing as they let both slide, I feel pretty good about that because again, both are pretty high leverage situations. If that interception doesn't take place for Arizona State, they don't have an opportunity to score. I think it leads directly to a touchdown on their next drive. Correct me if I'm wrong. Um,
I don't know
but
off the top of my head.
and yeah, you don't. I mean, yeah, it's just all that to say. Like, I think that was probably kind of those came out in the wash. The only other thing that I would kind of offer a bit of a comment on is Arizona State gets the ball in first overtime, drives and scores. They get Texas to a 4th and 13. And maybe this is just my own personal philosophy. Like I'm okay with you sending pressure. I don't love a zero blitz because for me, like especially like having watched some of the NFL results with regards to Hail Marys this year, like okay, well when it's a Hail Mary, I love sending 5 or sending 6. Like don't let the receivers get downfield enough to be a problem, right? With this one it's 4th and 13 and they're again still like 22, 23 yards away from a touchdown, right? From the end zone. Like there's not you can that will shorten the play, but 2 seconds is still plenty of time for a collegiate, a high caliber, especially a Texas caliber wide receiver to get downfield enough to, one, make the first down, and two, if he's loose, score in the open field. So I like that they were aggressive. I wouldn't have been that aggressive, especially after they made, you kind of tipped your hand. I think Quinn Ewers did a good job on his hard count to kind of make the Arizona State defense sort of declare what they were doing. He makes a protection adjustment, and it clearly worked. They blocked it up great. He delivers the pass, and that was pretty much all she wrote. Like, it felt like after that happened, the Arizona State, like, the air went out of the building, right? Like, Texas gets the ball in the next overtime. I can't remember how many plays it took them to score. It was a one play. Yeah, it was super fast. And then they just didn't have the juice on offense.
You show up in the middle of the play a little bit and they catch the catch.
That's right. That's right. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, okay, I did have some issues with that. I feel like we missed a few plays. Also, yeah, like the Rose Bowl didn't get delayed. Yeah. Like you're not going to delay it because we're going to have a double overtime game, so we're all going to come in.
Yep.
What, at like 10 minutes left in the first quarter, and Ohio State's already scored.
When Jeremiah's already taken over.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we could talk about issues with the broadcast in just a minute. But, all right, I feel like I just aired my grievances. But, yeah, it felt like all the air went out of the building when that happened. So that's one where it's like, I mean, even if you have to give up the fourth down, like, all right, fine, but give your defense another blade of grass to fight for. I feel like I just disagree with sending zero, no help over the top. I just disagree with that. Let's put it that way. Yeah, Dillingham owned it. I read that. Yeah,
I don't mind that call. You've been playing aggressive to win the game, the entire game, right? That's what got you into the situation to be successful. You've gone for it on fourth down on multiple times. You've pulled some trick plays out of your hat, and that's what had been your MO and made you successful and put you in a position. Like, I think far too often we see players and teams go into that shell like, oh, we're just going to protect. We just got to make sure nothing happens. And I get playing aggressive is fine. Maybe you leave one over the top in case whatever. But I don't have a terrible problem with that. Like, you expect that pass to be out in 2 seconds, and your safety came down on it, and they threw it over the top and got a good catch from Matthew Golden, who is that the receiver who just kind of took over in that game, by the way? Good heavens. I got to look at that.
You'll have to double check. Yeah,
he had like 7 catches and 149 yards, but anytime Texas needed a critical play, it felt like they went to him, and he made every single catch. It felt like. So, well done to that kid. Very, very surprised at Arizona State's ability to stop the run completely, just make this a one-sided team. Like, Texas ran the ball.
Yeah.
If you take out Quinn Ewers' rushes, right? They ran the ball 23 times for a grand total of 54 yards. So you're looking at.
Yeah, and particularly surprising when comparing that with the effort from Clemson, because, again, to a man, I think I like Clemson's front seven better than I like Arizona State's front seven.
But they played well.
But they played so well. So, yeah, hat tip to them. I think they, no one likes the moral victories or anything like that, but, I mean, no one's questioning that Arizona State belonged. Like, they clearly did. And I think that they were like another part of that when you look at kind of the totality of the sport. It's like, okay, maybe at one point the SEC was heads and shoulders above everyone else. That's not true right now.
I think my honest opinion is depth-wise, the SEC's heads and shoulders above everybody else because, like,
I wouldn't say heads and shoulders. I'd say, like, top to bottom, yeah, that's the best league, but I wouldn't say it's by a substantial margin.
I mean, how many 5-star players have gone to anywhere else but the SEC?
My answer is who cares?
Like, what I'm saying is the talent that is in the SEC is far more superior than the other conferences. But the talent is spread thinner than it ever has been within the SEC, right? Mississippi State can go out and get a quarterback that's substantial. Like, Vanderbilt can go out and get somebody that's good because they have the money. They have that SEC money. But those are 4 or 5 stars that would go sit on a bench at a normal Alabama school that are not going to play for Vandy because they're getting paid enough to do that.
Yeah, I would argue that, like, maybe I should make this designation a little bit different. Talent-wise, no argument, right? The NFL draft says that, right? Like, that part's pretty obvious. But I'm talking about teams, and teams and talent aren't necessarily the same. And I think we've seen a number of times this year, and again, I don't put too much weight in bowl games, but like even outside of bowl games, like you look at Vandy beats Bama and loses to Georgia
Yeah,
State.
we're seeing
So
more parity
okay,
because
like
everybody's able to get better talent across the board.
yeah. And then the other thing, but like you look at like the Big Ten teams that played like SEC teams, especially when they were at full strength in bowl games, right? Okay, Missouri, a 10-2 team from the SEC, needs a comeback win over. Gosh, I'm blanking who it was that they played. A 9-3 team from the Big Ten. Gosh, who was that?
Is it Iowa?
It wasn't
No.
Wisconsin. Iowa. Thank you. Yeah, it was 8-4, I guess, huh? 8-4 Iowa, and those teams are both approximately at full strength. I guess Luther Burden maybe didn't play for Mizzou, so that's a big loss there. But Illinois beating South Carolina, again, both teams largely at full strength. Um, you know, the opted out like crazy Michigan beats Alabama, where you did not have opt outs. You had Milrow plays, you had Campbell plays, like essentially that entire team. No one that, barring a few people that I think entered the transfer portal, I think they were mostly at full strength, whereas Michigan was not. Like I just feel like top to bottom, it maybe is slightly better, but it's not miles ahead of those. And again, I am making a distinction between talent
And
and
I would agree
team
with you on that. Like
because
the teams are
yeah,
better
because
than the other teams that are out in the other conferences by a lot.
yeah, and I'd say specifically the Big Ten. I feel like they have shown like now in multiple occasions when they play an SEC team, they force the game to be played their way, right? And that's the part that's really interesting. It's like they'll all right, we're gonna play Smash Mouth football, and you're gonna have to play in a phone booth, and maybe the SEC of 15, 20 years ago would be okay with that, but now that there's some changes stylistically within certain conferences, as one team starts to have success, other teams start to mimic it. You're starting to see that more, and it's just fascinating to see what the Big Ten, when given an opportunity to line up at full strength against some of these SEC teams, the amount of success they're having. So I'm excited. I think that this playoff is something that, again, it's the first time that they've done it. I'm sure there'll be a few kinks that'll be ironed out with regards to some of the things that people have gripes with, like automatic buys or how the seating works. And I'm fine with whatever you want to do there. Really, I don't care. I would say let's not overreact to year one. um, but I just think that this is getting more exciting, that more teams have a chance, and some of the teams that got in that probably wouldn't have had a chance acquitted themselves extremely well. Like
Yeah,
Arizona State, my hat's
yeah.
off to you, is really what it is.
That's what I was also going to talk about. It's like the Big 12, I think, did a decent job against SEC. They didn't beat the SEC very much. If you're talking about bowl games, but I mean, Baylor and LSU, that game was Baylor was blowing them out at one point in time, LSU was blowing out Baylor at one point in time, and Baylor
Oh
started to
yeah,
make it a close game, and now LSU finished up winning by 13. But like Baylor made that not a comfortable win. Texas, you have Arizona State, not a comfortable win. I'm looking back across even Arkansas, Texas Tech. I mean, Arkansas got out to a 21-3 lead, but then by halftime it's 24-19. Like these teams are playing these teams well, and maybe we need a little more to tip over to the Big 12 teams, but like those leagues are not that far behind. So
yeah. Again, I think this is something we'll probably talk about more in the off season or in the lead up to 2020, the 2025 season. But the problem the Big 12 is going to face is that they don't play enough out of conference matchups against real teams in 2025. Like if you're seeing what Texas Tech is doing on the transfer portal, that's going to probably be a pretty good
yeah,
team. I'm curious to see if they're like 10-2. They might not get a crack at it, and it might not be fair to that team because that team might be really, really good, but they just don't have the requisite out of conference games within the Big 12 to get like to really. I went through the entire thing. I think the most marquee matchup they have is Baylor hosts Auburn in the first week of
yeah,
the season. I couldn't see another like great out of conference matchup where it's like, okay, this is another game that the Big 12 can hang its hat on against really any of the other conferences. I guess you have Iowa State, right? Like, but again, like Iowa State's kind of a middle of the road Big 10 team, not necessarily like a top tier one. So I think that's perhaps going to haunt the Big 12. I guess the other one that you could look at potentially is like TCU playing SMU in their annual rivalry game. But I don't know. I think that one's one like we'll sound the alarm here and just say, hey guys, if come next year it's close between some teams, the Big 12 maybe doesn't have the out of conference wins or data points against some of the other major conferences. It's pretty weak, which is disappointing and probably a little bit short-sighted of their when they brought in these new teams to just say, oh yeah, well those scheduled matchups within our conference, like we'll just play them as non-conference games because you have several of them last year or several of them in 2024, a few more of them in 25. But yeah, sorry, we didn't even get to the bottom part of the bracket.
No,
You
no,
want to talk?
I'll go. I'll go. I want to touch about those non-conference games.
Yeah, go for it.
You
Go
have
for it.
Georgia Tech at Colorado. If I'm pulling the right thing,
Yeah, I
TCU
think you're
plays
right. Yeah.
UNC at UNC, and Utah plays UCLA, and Baylor plays Auburn in the first week.
Mm-hmm.
See any others? Nope. Okay, and then go to week 2. You have Kansas at Missouri, Baylor at SMU, and Arizona State at Mississippi State. And then week 3, Kansas State at Arizona. It's a non-conference game, but it's like essentially a conference game. So I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of things to hang your hat on, and it doesn't help. I mean, like BYU had a home and or 2-1 schedule against Ole Miss. Whereas like 2008 or 2028, 2029, whatever else, and Ole Miss canceled that this year. Yeah, it was
Did
like
they?
in September they canceled it, or last year, I guess. So yeah, they need to go to an 8 conference schedule if they can.
See, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm fine with a 9-team schedule, but like, hey, of those other non-conference opponents, we have to schedule other Power 5 teams. Like
I just feel,
the number of them that's not or non-Power 5
yeah,
is troubling to
maybe
me.
that's the case. Yeah, I don't know. All right, you want to talk about the bottom bracket?
Yeah. So Boise State, Penn State. The Friday
Yeah,
night
New Year's
game?
Eve.
I think that's right. Your reaction? Sorry, I feel like I went first on.
Good. That game was never really in question. Boise State was able to control it from the get go, and I think it was a combination of their ground game, kind of like laying the foundation to open up the passing game. They run for 216 yards, and then you're able to bottle up Ashton for 104 yards. He has the ball 30 times, and he doesn't touch the end zone. That's 3.5 yards to carry. That's not a good ROI. If we go business terms, right there. And like it's just too many turnovers too. Like you have 3 interceptions thrown in that game. Like it's a recipe for disaster. You can't get in the end zone. You can't win the turnover battle. And I think every single team that won the turnover battle won their games. Is that right? Maybe not
Yes, I think
Texas. I don't know off the top of my head.
Texas shouldn't have. Yeah, I think
But
Texas would have been negative in the
Boise State.
turnover.
I mean, I don't know how many turnovers they did have in the game, but
They were lucky that a couple of Ashton Genty fumbles
yeah,
didn't go the other way
I mean,
too. Yeah, it was a little bit disappointing. I mean, I think we went into the game saying like, you're gonna have to play a perfect game if you're Boise, and
maybe like okay, let's in a perfect world, let's take away the turnovers. But Boise State had more yardage, they had more first downs, they had the ball more often, right? Because you could argue because Penn State got in the end zone, but I mean, I'm looking at the passing yards per or passing yards per pass. Thank you. Penn State 6.8, Boise State 8.7. Rushing yards. This is where it's significant. 5.3 to 2.7. Like that's probably the one thing you can point to that ended up beating them, and then the turnovers. Because if you don't have the turnovers, you make this a game. I feel like.
yeah, and yeah, they had opportunities again like that. I think the Boise State defensive line played pretty well, but they played well against the pass. And the tragic part was they couldn't force Penn State into a situation where they had to throw the football a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that we kind of talked about that. Is like if they can get it to where their pass rushers are able to go up against Penn State's offensive line, And I think the defensive coordinator, Spencer Danielson, is obviously the head coach. I can't remember who the defense coordinator. Some really good looking blitzes that got guys free. Some good defensive line games with a couple of stunts and twists that just got a lot of hits on Drew Aller, who stood in there, played tough, but took a number of sacks. They played a great game in the pass game, and in the run game they just gave up a couple of explosives. And many of those explosives, if I'm remembering the game now, I have not rewatched it to refresh my memory. So I'm going off of just the one time watching it, but a week ago now, just about. But looking back on it, if I remember right, they're most of the time they had a person in a position to make a tackle, and Katron Allen, for the most part, it mostly was Katron Allen. I guess Singleton probably closed the show with that one, 56-yard touchdown or something, to close it. But man, that guy's thighs are like tree trunks, and to me, it's like you can't try and ankle tackle him. You just got to hold on to him. Like, hey, I'm okay with you giving up a 7 or an 8-yard run that yields a first down. Don't give up a 40-yarder because you're the last line of defense. Grab him, hold him. If he drags you, whatever, let the cavalry get there. Let your friend, let your team rally to it, and make them continue to give yourself another blade of grass to fight for, right? So that part, I think, was the one thing I would say was a little bit disappointing from some of the back end of Boise State's defense. But otherwise, they played an okay game. Again, like you said, it wasn't ever in doubt, but it wasn't exactly a blowout either, right? They didn't get stomped in this game, and that was with some of the things that happened where they turned the ball over a bunch and they put the ball on the ground. And did they miss field goals too? I think that they missed a couple of All right. So there was all that to say, there were more opportunities for them to keep this game closer, controlling what they controlled. I hope this isn't the last of what we see from Boise. They had a great team. I think it was pretty senior laden, so it might be a minute before they get before they have a roster that maybe can do something similar. But valiant effort from them. Penn State did what they had to do. They're on to the next. Anything else on that one?
So Boise State missed 2 field goals, the opening drive, and then late in the third or quarter or so. The other thing is that's kind of crazy is when we said that that Penn State ran for 5.3 yards a carry. If you look just at the running backs though, it's 7.5 yards a carry. That's insane.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's a okay passing day. Not a great passing, an okay passing day. And your ROI or your yards per play on passing is significantly higher normally than your runs, but you do it to kind of open up the games. But I mean, if you're running the ball at 7.5 yards a carry, good heavens, you're picking first down every 2 plays, and you're unstoppable. So.
Yeah, that was really kind of the name of the game. You had to, if you're a Boise, get Penn State into passing situations and let your defensive line do what it does best. And again, I think they had a solid effort, but it was just too much. Katron Allen was really awesome in that game, particularly in the first half. So,
it is what it is.
Georgia Notre Dame.
Let's go Georgia Notre Dame. I've got my stuff up here real quick.
Right. You want to hit me with it, or I can go first, whatever you want.
Gunnar Stockton surprised me how good he was.
I thought he did great.
Been put on the money, play over play, and to be honest, this loss isn't on him. I don't think so. Yeah, probably your wide receivers and your offensive line not being able to move the ball because you had too many drops in that game. I think there was 2 or 3. One major drop, right, all the way down the field that was wide open. But I mean, Travis Etienne runs for only 38 yards on 11 carries. Notre Dame effectively made them a one-sided team and won that game. And Notre Dame doesn't out. Do they out? I don't think they had more yardage than them. Yeah, they don't have more yardage than them. They were just able to control the game when they got there and took advantage of their opportunities. I don't know. It was an interesting game to me. That Riley Leonard and Notre Dame's offense did not dominate, but the game never felt in doubt to me.
Yeah, and part of it was just like I mean, it's one thing to make a mistake. It's another thing to make a mistake in like high leverage situations. Like I can think of the two Georgia turnovers. Like one directly leads to a touchdown. Another one takes at least 3 points
Yeah,
off the
you're
board for
driving.
Georgia in the first half,
Yeah.
both of them. So I mean, it's one thing to put the ball on the ground. It's another thing to put the ball on the ground in both those situations where you're about to score or you're backed up and it directly leads to a score for the other team. I think that was kind of what I had thought when I said, "Hey, Notre Dame," because I was like, I think that they can force this to be a
Mm-hmm.
one. And I didn't even realize they said it on the broadcast, but like Georgia leads the nation in
Yeah.
drops. Yikes! Wow, um, that's not good. I did not know that, and maybe that explains some of their struggles that they had against several different teams in the regular season. Thinking of the Ole Miss and Kentucky games specifically, but that was something that I wasn't aware of, and it reared its ugly head in this game for sure. Now I do feel like I got to defend. I don't even remember the guy's name. The guy who dropped it way down the field. I will not defend him. Like there's no defending him, right? Like even Notre Dame didn't defend him. Uh, but but I would say that one's pretty egregious. But they do end up scoring on that possession, so that one doesn't come back to bite them quite like like it may have if that possession had come up empty. They score a touchdown even um, but I just I think we kind of saw that game early. Yeah, I felt like that played out the way I thought it would. Like give it enough time. If Notre Dame can just win at the margins here and there, like they're going to like defense don't mess it up
Well,
and give the offense a couple cracks at it.
and
And by the time it was a 2-score game, I was like, I like unless something really changes, like I'm feeling pretty comfortable if I'm a Notre Dame
well,
fan.
and honestly, that's the Riley Leonard factor. Like, you're not going to take negative plays. You're going to get positive plays
Yeah,
or minimum small plays, and so you're always in a position to convert third down. You're always in a position to be successful. I mean, we see one sack, one tackle for a loss by Georgia the entire game, and like when I don't have to go backwards, and my only problem is when I'm having penalties, which Notre Dame had way more penalties than they probably should have in that game. Um, but
yeah,
you put yourself in a possession to be, or in an opportunity to be successful, and that's what happened. Like Leonard frequently found his way pressured, sneak out the back, pick up some yards.
three
I mean,
yards.
I think he runs
Yeah,
for like 90 yards in the game. I don't know if it's right off the top of my head, but it was just such an impressive game from Riley Leonard. Not carrying the team, but like willing his team to win. You know, so and and also a props from Marcus Freeman with his play calling. Um, I like that they went after the punt. I understand. Like. I don't get you roughing the kicker twice slash running the kicker.
yeah. That second one I had to call the dogs off. I'm like, all right, we
I
got
don't know how that
lucky.
first one's not
Like
called roughing the kicker.
me neither. Like I understand. Like really, what they're looking for is if you hit like the plant
Yeah,
leg, and he doesn't hit the plant leg, but he hits
yeah.
his hip
It's not
really
the plant
hard,
leg; it's the
and it's like,
waist. You can't hit a leg when you're hitting above where legs start.
yeah, I guess like I'm right there with you. I thought, yeah, that's an important. I'm glad you called that out. Like I thought it was roughing, and then they hit him again. I was like, oh my gosh! Like again, the second one
Same
wasn't as
player
severe, but
too.
like why? Yeah, why are you doing like why are you like you're trying to start the game off
Yeah,
on a bad foot?
and then
Like
like the play where you call the entire team off and the entire field goal unit off, or punting unit off, and you put your offense on. I mean, you're on the like 25-yard line, like not you're on your side of the ball, and Riley Leonard's able to get somebody to jump, which is insane. Like I love it. Well done, Marcus. He his interviews were, we know this is going to be a battle. We can't take our foot off their throats. We got to continue to push. We can't give
yeah,
get complacent. That team has that mentality, and it'll be an interesting game against Penn State because, like you said, they're missing players in the middle of that defensive line. But those linebackers against Georgia flew around and filled every single hole. And if they do the same thing again,
oh yeah.
I can see them beating Penn State. No problem.
Yeah, I think they're favored in that. Which again, I kind of like them in that. Again, I see those teams as pretty
Mm-hmm.
similar. Um, all I was gonna say is like they're pretty similar. So in similar teams there, it's like, okay, which head coach do I trust more? Which quarterback do I trust more? I think both I lean or not Penn State, Notre Dame. So that was kind of my thought process, was that I thought that they may have kind of the edge there. That's why I picked them in this game.
The one thing
I'm
that will
excited
be
to see that one play out.
the one thing that will be rough for them is
Yeah, go.
the linebackers are needed to fill for the run, but you also have to respect Tyler Warren in the past as a linebacker too. And so you're going to have some issues there, I think, where it's like, oh, you're sucked up and Tyler Warren beats you, or oh, you're covering Tyler Warren, so you've exposed yourself to Kentron Allen. And if Penn State's able to leverage that enough, I think that they can be successful. I think there's a reason it's 2 point,
Yeah,
and
yeah, it'll be a close game for sure. Yeah, that one's yeah. I mean, maybe we just now start to break down those two games. I think that game, I haven't looked at lines or anything. I'm not really prepared to kind of give like picks against
uh,
the spread.
minus
So
two
you
and a
give them to
half
me, I
right
can
now on draft. Yep.
for Notre Dame. Okay, so the line is moving more toward Notre Dame. Yeah, and I think that's the right team is favored, but kind of like that line indicates, it really is kind of a
Do we
coin
have
flip.
more incompletions in that game than we have completions with those two quarterbacks?
No, I think with those two quarterbacks against those defenses, maybe.
I mean, I think Drew Aller was like
I
13
don't
for
know. Like,
25, so he barely made 55%, and I don't even know what. And Riley Leonard was 15 for 24, so he's a little bit over. He's like maybe 60%, so it'll be close.
yeah, yeah. I think it'll be a good matchup. I really don't know if I see a whole lot of
These
points
are
being
teams that
scored. I
don't
don't.
stretch the defense very much. You don't have somebody that's going to take the top off and a quarterback that can make that throw either.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I was gonna say. I think it's both components. I think you're right. Their wide receivers aren't exactly, you know, guys that will stretch the field, and then again, I wouldn't necessarily trust either QB to really sling it deep a whole ton either. So I agree. So it will be probably a more methodical game, probably a lower scoring game. I'm sticking with my pick with Notre Dame. I don't have a ton of like great analysis. Again, I have not really had a ton of time to like really pay attention to
You
it,
don't
or
even have
think
great
through it,
analysis
how I
as it
would
is, you
approach it.
know?
I know, but usually I can give like maybe one or two things. This time I don't. I just think Notre Dame's going to win.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. If you go by the seeding, we have a 6 versus a 7. I mean, the teams that have the teams. Oh, this is something we also didn't talk about. The teams that had buys, none of them advanced.
All of them out. Yeah.
Very, very, very
I
surprising.
don't know if I'm reading too far into that just yet, but like again, something to keep in mind for next year, right?
It's
Like,
that I feel like I've noticed in the NFL a little bit too. I don't know, so like those people can just go on those card games and then they play the next game and they're already humming. Um, well,
yeah,
just looking at this, I think it comes down to whether Notre Dame can plug their holes in defense. That's going to be the key. The offense will score points. I mean, the over under is like 44.5, which sounds about right. Like you don't expect Notre Dame to put up more than 25, 28 points in the game, and Penn State kind of does the same. So it's going to be a good game, an all out brawl, and this is why you sometimes when you have these lower scoring teams, like you never know who's going to win because it could be easy if you just happen to break one. If you break a 98-yard,
yeah, exactly. You get one explosive play, or like a special team score, or a defensive score, or something like that, and it can get one sided quickly. I don't see
yeah,
that happening. I think this is going to be a knockdown, drag out fight. But you're right. That's kind of the recipe
I
for
do
it.
just think I believe in this culture right now that Marcus Freeman's built in Notre Dame. It's stronger. It doesn't have this like are we quite sure whether we can win a big game or not from Penn State? Um, and to be honest, like I'm not going to give you that point for Boise State either. You beat a Boise State team that's good, but it's not a Big Ten team or SEC team or a Big 12 team that's like really really well done. Sorry, they haven't played a ton of people, and we mentioned that they struggle against Wyoming. So yeah,
Yeah,
The culture of
yeah.
Notre Dame is going to carry, and I think they win. I think if they bust a few, this could end up bigger than most people expect. So
Oh, all right. Okay. Um, one last thing on that. What was I gonna say? Oh, yeah, you talked about Marcus Freeman. Yeah, super easy to root for that guy, right? Like, I just like who doesn't like him. Also, have you like looked at pictures from at him like from like high school versus now? He's got this like reverse Benjamin Button thing going
no,
on, or it's Benjamin Button,
yeah,
right? Benjamin Button gets old and then gets younger. Okay, so he's got that going. Like, look at like go find his rivals profile from when he was a player. Like, he shaved his head. He looks way older than he does now. Like, he looks
oh
like
yeah.
like isn't that wild? Like for those of you listening, go ahead and do it, or
In
we
those
could.
pictures.
Yeah, he looks super old there, and now look at him as a head coach like 20 years later, and he looks like vibrant. I mean, obviously, of course, he let the hair grow out. Maybe that was part of it. Like, just wanted to be like intimidating on the field as a player. I get it, but yeah, it's just funny looking at those. Like, that's the same dude. How? But yeah, interesting. And then yeah, on the other side of the bracket, Texas, Oregon. Again, I mentioned, or not Oregon. Yikes.
Yeah,
Ohio State. I mentioned I believe and quite strongly believe the winner of that game has the inside track
yeah,
in the national championship, right? I think the winner of that game is probably more likely to win the national championship than whoever comes out of the bottom part of the bracket between Penn State and Notre Dame. Ohio State's favored. I mean, I think that they should win the game. Again, I picked them to win the game. I think I picked them, yeah, against Texas. Um, I still have some concerns. Like Quinn Ewers is very hit and miss. Like even in that game against Arizona State, there were some wildly inaccurate throws. There were a few that were darts, like, but just that gives me concern. I guess my really the only concern on the Ohio State side is like, can they keep this going? Like, it's like we've talked about this before. It's hard to stay, to stay at that same level, especially against the caliber of opponents is continuing to get like more and more difficult. I mean, I guess technically, I would probably say that Ohio State probably faced a better team in Oregon last round. I don't know what odds makers would say between Texas and Oregon, but I just I mean, playing at that high of a level 3 or 4 games in a row is challenging. So is it to me? It's just like, does the adrenaline wear off at some point? Outside of that, Texas gave me a lot of concern in this last game. Like, they couldn't run the football. I, it's going to be hard to run the football against Ohio State's defensive line. I think Ohio State's better equipped to force Texas into a shootout, which again, pass rushers for Ohio State, they've got a good chance. Again, I like the offensive line of Texas, but it's pretty banged up, so I don't know who's playing and who's not. This is one that again I'm picking Ohio State. I think it will be a close game. I think it should be a good game, but I can see a world where this again is like a 3 or 4 score win for Ohio State because it snowballs on
yeah.
Texas.
From my perspective, um, I'll be interested to see if Sark can scheme his way to be successful because I feel like he schemed the running game really well against Clemson and he struggled against
Mm-hmm.
Arizona State. Arizona State, I don't feel like Arizona State applied extra pressure than Clemson did to the run. It's just the scheming up was better against Clemson. Um, it feels like Ohio State though has tapped into that like crush them, like killer instinct mentality, which I didn't.
Yes.
Which earlier in this year I kind of talked about like they didn't quite have it. You're seeing them kind of letting teams hang around. They didn't really kill Penn State when they beat them. They kind of like just I think what the game was game 21-17 or something like that off the top of my head. I don't know. But like they've tapped into a mentality like we are out to win and we are out to show you that we're the better team. And I that's the thing that scares me. And I can see it getting out of hand because of that. Like once if Texas starts getting behind, I don't know if they'll have the mentality like, oh, we got to come back, we got to whatever. And I could see Ohio State going, all right, throw it up in the air to Jeremiah Smith, and
Yeah. Let's put the nail in the coffin.
and
Yeah.
for that reason, I picked Texas originally, but I'm going to pick Ohio State, and I'm going to pick them like expect Ohio State to win by 10. Like I don't think
Yeah, I think they cover as well. Yeah, I guess. But going back to the other game, I think Notre Dame wins. Since it's a 2.5 point spread, I'll go ahead and say that they
Yeah,
cover
I'll pick
too.
both.
Um,
So the 5.5 is for Ohio State. I don't think this is.
oh, it's down to 5.5. Like I know it opened to like three something. It got all the way I think up to 6.5. I didn't realize it'd come back
Let me
down a little
see.
bit.
Yeah, from
I still feel pretty comfortable Ohio
on
State covering
ESPN
the
they report that
spread.
it opened at 5. So,
Okay.
so it's up to 5.5. I don't know. That I can't see a world where Ohio State isn't playing at that level, and Quinn Ewers is going to have to play amazing because
Yeah.
you don't have the weapons that you need to be like. You don't have different amazing receivers. You have one good one, and then maybe depending on who's the Alabama transfer, a Bond Isaiah is that Isaiah Bond?
Yeah.
If he can play or if he's, I mean, then you'd be okay. But I don't even know where he's at nowadays. I haven't looked at if he's hurt or did he even play in that last game?
I think, but I don't know that. Are you surprised at the playing time or lack thereof of Arch Manning?
I'm not because I think part of the reason Quinn Ewers is allowed to show up or was willing to come back is that they promised him that they would give him this opportunity. Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying pull him. I'm saying like have a package for him. Like he's clearly like have a package like 3 or 4, 5 snaps a game where it's like, hey, we're gonna run on 3 or 4 of those, but then that one other one is gonna be a fake run and he's gonna
Yeah,
chuck it deep.
against
Like
Clemson.
I would have it as a change of pace that I would have sprinkled
Yeah,
in over the
I think
last couple
Clemson
of
he
games.
was used 2 or 3 times, and I also wonder, to be frank, if Sark maybe called a vanilla game against Arizona State to hide some stuff.
Thinking he didn't need
Yeah,
to do, yeah. We didn't even talk about the fact that he didn't go for it to try and go up 17
yeah,
when they were when they scored a touchdown. That was a mistake. I said it in the moment. I was like, he's going to let them. He's going to give them a chance in this game that they don't.
right.
They should have to earn on the 2 point try, but he's just going to give
Yeah,
it to them. Didn't quite come back to haunt him, but I don't think he'll make that mistake again.
I mean Sark is. I've always been cautious to trust him, and this year he's gained my trust, and now I'm maybe starting to see the old Sark a little bit.
Yeah, like I've heard you sort of start to change. Yeah, change your tune on him, and then then that game takes place. Like, oh, I don't know. Like that's kind of what I was like. I thought they would kind of win really comfortably. Again, Arizona State brawled, fought their way back, and throughout most of the game, I think like down outplayed Texas, which I did not expect. So, um, but yeah, I think spinning it forward, yeah, I've got Ohio State, and yeah, like it's gonna be such a funny thing for them to like if they like win a national championship, but some of their fans are still pissed off because they didn't beat
Yeah,
Michigan.
it'll be fun.
Because Michigan fans are gonna still be like, hey, y'all still
Yeah,
lost to
and it'll
us.
be even
Like
funnier when next year
you're
when
0
they
and
don't
4
beat
the last
Michigan
4 years.
again. It'll be even
Sorry,
funnier when they
what?
don't beat Michigan again next year because Michigan's crazy.
Oh gosh, yeah, they're loading for bear. I think they've got the Oracle CEO's significant other is a big Michigan
Well, so is
fan,
Dave
and
Portney. The
well, Portnoy is
yeah,
an alumnus.
um,
So yeah, they've got a couple of people that are quite
yeah,
passionate, or know someone who's quite passionate about Michigan sports. Um, we're an hour in. I didn't expect us
do
to take that long. We kind of went. Do you have anything else you want
you
to
want to talk about any
tackle?
transfers?
Let's see. I threw that on there just because I just wanted to like see if there's anything like major of note. Maybe we'll just do a little transfer portal segment after the championship, something like that. Once more of the dust is settled, because there are people in the portal who
Yeah,
haven't decided. Of course, there are with these playoff teams, they still have like a so many day window after their final game to enter, so there might be some more. I'll put this out there because this is something I believe in pretty firmly. You've seen the reports that there's a bunch of tampering with Quinn Ewers, and I think that makes sense to me. Like
yeah,
Arch Manning's without doubt going to be the starter next year
yeah.
at
There's no
Texas,
way
right?
that
Like,
Arch would stick around if they're not going to hand him the reins. Yeah,
yeah, it's one or the other. And again, I lean toward Arch. I just think Quinn's arm is. Well, that's the thing. Is like that's what I was going for. Is like who are QB buyers right now? I've got three of them. Bama. I don't think Bama's got their starting quarterback for next year on their roster at this point. Maybe it's the oh gosh, the Washington Austin Mack, I think is his name. He transferred with DeBoer.
Okay.
So maybe him. But I say Bama. I think Georgia's a buyer. Like, again, Stockton played fine.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm rolling with Stockton into next season, feeling pretty good about my chances. Miami certainly is a buyer.
Who's the Ohio State quarterback?
I mean, I think they like what they have in Julian Sands.
Oh, okay.
He's a true freshman this year. I think he'll probably take over next year. But I think there's three teams that are very much still interested in a transfer quarterback, and so I think there is going to be at least one high-profile guy that leaves. Quinn is, I think, the most obvious.
What about Notre Dame?
No, they've already said that they're not interested in one. I think that they're going to go with CJ Carr.
Okay.
And we'll see. But I think they're pretty happy with what they have in CJ Carr. But I don't know. I could be wrong. That's another one that potentially, if they wanted to make another run and load up for another run next year, that might be the path to take. I can't think of any others right now. USC. Is USC going to stick with Jaden Mayava? He threw like 3 interceptions in that bowl game. The man throws picks.
Yeah.
Like, he makes a few plays here and there, but he throws the ball to the wrong team a lot. So like USC might be involved in any transfer QB as well. That would be an interesting one. Also, this is again kind of just we're going far afield. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Oh, keep going.
Go ahead. Sorry. Well, I was going to kind of change the subject a little bit.
The only other transfer I was going to talk about in my head was the Branch brothers from USC.
Yes.
Committing to Georgia. Like, I feel like he showed potential as a freshman. Now, what can we see at the next level, or see at the SEC?
You're talking about Zach Branch, I'm assuming, because Zion Branch, his older brother, I don't think plays.
No, he doesn't.
Like, he'll be there. I don't think he'll play.
No, I'm going to the freshman from this year, number 4. What's his name?
Bolden.
Yeah, KJ. There you
go. Yeah. I agree. I don't think he's a major contributor for Georgia next year. Zach Branch, again, does that mean that Georgia's going with Gunnar Stockton next year? That's the part that I'm a little surprised that, I'm a little surprised that Miami's been able to get, I forget who the receiver was that they got out of the portal. Georgia getting some, like, are you guys really confident in who they have either on their roster or who they're claiming they already have sewn up behind the scenes? Because I'm not. But yeah, that one to me is interesting too. The other thing I was going to just talk about is the 5-star QB from Oregon. Did you read about this? You see this?
Yeah.
Let's go to Cal. This is Bear territory. What?
I said, yeah, switch over to Cal.
What'd you say?
I was just laughing about it.
Yeah. I love it. I think we may have a little bit of a disconnect on our connection here. Sorry, I think that's probably on my end. But all that to say, yeah, just back to Cal. Like, was at Oregon a couple of weeks. Decided, this isn't for me. And he's going to start at Cal. Like,
yeah, why not?
Cal lost Fernando Mendoza to Indiana. They also lost their other quarterback, Chandler Rogers, to the transfer portal, I think, today, who's a grad transfer, so he's able to enter.
Well, that's because
so he'll start day one.
He's like, oh, 5 stars coming? I'm out.
Yeah, I'm dipping. I don't know. That'd be interesting. Just all right. I'll keep an eye on that one. I like what Cal has defensively. So, yeah. And Jaden Ott's back next year, 5-star QB. All right, I'm intrigued. Like, I'll take a note for that one. We'll see what comes of it. Brian Harson's the offensive coordinator now.
That's right.
And Nick Rolovich is on that staff too. Both pretty good offensive minds. Like,
yeah.
So, all right, okay. Pay attention to you, Cal. I don't have anything else.
I'm excited to see who transfers out of the championship teams, like these last 4. Like, if we have anybody leave after these games. So
Yeah, I could think of a wide receiver or two from Ohio State.
yeah,
Brandon Ennis,
maybe.
Carnell
Yeah,
Tate. Maybe one of those two, maybe both.
yeah.
Those are the ones that's like most obvious to me. Like, okay, maybe something there. Um, Beyond that, there aren't many obvious ones on Ohio State that are like jumping out at me right now. Texas, I feel like again we talked about Quinn Ewers. That's the most obvious one. With the emergence of goodness, I can't remember his first name, Wisner, the running
Mm-hmm.
back. Do you think that they end up seeing some attrition at the running
I
back position? It was pretty stocked to start the
Yeah, I could
year.
see that 100%. I mean, we already lost two
Yeah.
running
So
backs.
between him, C.J. Baxter, Jarrett Gibson, like it's a full room. There's some really good players on it. So I could see one of them leaving. Beyond that, nothing really jumps out at me as
Yeah,
like, oh,
for
this
Penn
guy's
State
a
or
threat to
Notre Dame, to
leave.
be honest.
Penn State, Notre
I can't think of
Dame,
anything
trying to think through those ones. Yeah,
high profile.
nothing right off the cuff. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll keep an eye on it, and we'll tackle that in our transfer portal one. We'll probably talk through like maybe like after the championship game, we'll come up with like here are like 5 or 6 transfers that we think are like big time contributors or something like that. I don't know. I've been kind of like paying attention to it and been like, oh, this guy hit the portal. Good to know. And then also like just like gauging my own like, am I seeing the game like other people are? Like, for example, like I'll call out one right now that I think is a big pickup. I was big on him at BYU, but Isaiah Moa, he was a linebacker. BYU had a pretty crowded linebacker room and pretty productive room. He hit the portal, was a little surprised because he was getting a fair amount of run with that team, but now he's going to Michigan State, and I kind of thought like, yeah, he's one that if you could keep him, you wanted to because he's a pretty good player. So I think he'll end up being. I think Michigan State will be very happy
Yeah,
with that. Let's put it that way. So maybe we come up with another like short list of those in a subsequent episode, kind of leading into the off season. But um, if there's nothing else, we'll leave you with that. Thanks for checking us out and sticking around this deep into the pod, everyone. Hope everyone had a great holiday, a happy new year, and yeah, we'll close out the season strong, and we'll see you on the next one.